Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here, 1.3 now. Um, you can solve this however you want, but we're going to try to factor this one to solve so you can get some practice factoring. Okay, so looking for two numbers that multiply to give you negative 44 that add to give you 7. And what that happens to be in this case is 11 and negative 4, right? Because 11 times negative 4 is negative 44, and 11 plus negative 4 is 7, so it works. So x plus 11 and x minus 4 work. So to solve with quadratics, you set them each equal to 0 and solve. So you minus 11, so you get x equals negative 11. You add 4 to both sides, and you get x equals 4. So negative 11 and 4 are your answers. Taking a look at the next one, let's try to factor this one and solve. Can you think of two numbers that multiply to give you negative 56 that add to give you negative 1? Well, negative 8 and 7, right? Because negative 8 times 7 is negative 56. Negative 8 plus 7 is negative 1. So when we set it up, it's p minus 8 and a p plus 7. So I separate each of those to set equal to 0. So I add an 8 to both sides, so I get p equals 8. And I would subtract 7 on both sides to get p equals negative 7. And there are your two answers for that one as well. So with this one, just to solve a quadratic in general, you need to get everything onto one side. So I'm going to minus the 16e and then add the 48 over. So I have everything on one side now. So now I have everything onto one side. Since it wants us to factor and solve again, looking for two numbers that multiply to give me 48 that add to give me a negative 16. So running through some stuff, I come up with negative 12 and negative 4. So negative 12 times negative 4 is positive 48, and negative 12 plus negative 4 is negative 16. So I separate those into e minus 12 and e minus 4. So when I go to solve these, separate each of them to set equal to 0. I add 12 on both sides, so I get e equals 12. I add 4 to both sides, so I get e equals 4. So 12 and 4 are my answers. So with this one, let's combine like terms all on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minus a 2y squared over to this side, so I can make a positive y squared. So when I do that, I just have a y squared, I have a minus 5y, I have a 25, and 5y. So I got to move everything over to the other side, so minus 5y, and I get y squared minus 10y plus 25. So what multiplies to give you 25, that adds to give you negative 10, negative 5 and negative 5, right? Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. Negative 5 plus negative 5 is negative 10. So I put those both in, y minus 5 and y minus 5. So minus 5 and minus 5, I add 5 to both sides, and I get y equals 5 as my answer for both of them. Alright, in this one, I got to combine everything together. So let's factor and solve this one as well. So with this one, I take this and move it over to the other side. So minus a 3s squared minus a 3s squared. So you just get s squared minus the 4s plus 52 equals 13s. Since it's quadratic, got to move everything over. So minus 13s over to this side. So when I do that, I get 0 because I wanted to do this. It's quadratic. And I get s squared minus 17s plus 52 equals 0. So what multiplies to give you 52 that also adds to give you negative 17? Well, negative 13 and negative 4, because negative 13 times negative 4 is 52. Negative 13 plus negative 4 is negative 17. So I have s minus 13 and s minus 4. So s minus 13 equals 0. S minus 4 equals 0. I add 13 to both sides to get 13 as my answer. I add 4 to both sides to get 4 as my answer. So a 13 and a 4 are my two answers. So with this one, I combine my like terms to factor and solve. So I minus a 5x over. And when I do that, they're gone. So I have x squared minus 26 equals negative 10. So it wants me to factor. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides just to get everything there. And if you notice, this is a difference of squares problem, right? This is a difference of squares. So this becomes a 4 squared. So according to the formula for difference of squares, my base is an x and my base is a 4. So it's x minus 4 and x plus 4. So x minus 4 equals 0 and x plus 4 equals 0. So add 4 to both sides. I get x equals 4 and x equals negative 4 are my answers. Problem like this, to factor and solve, I can't just, because it's set up, do x minus 3 equals 14 and x plus 2 equals 14. I cannot do that. So I need to figure out how to solve this. So I need to first actually FOIL. So I get x squared plus 2x. That's a minus 3x minus 6 equals the 14. I combine my like terms to get x squared minus x minus 6. And that equals 14. And minus 14 on both sides, and I get x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. So now, what multiplies to give you a negative 20 that adds to give you a negative 1? Now I can try to factor this. Remember, you can't just set that equal to anything unless it's equal to 0. It has to be equal to 0. That's why I had to FOIL all this. So the only things that come to mind for me are negative 5 and 4, because negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1, so it's x minus 5 and x plus 4. So I separate those and set them equal to 0. I add 5 to both sides, so I get x equals 5. I minus 4, so I get x equals negative 4. Alright, and when I come back, I will try to finish up the rest of the examples.